Tom Greatrex, why did Labour not build a single new nuclear power plant during 13 years in government?
Well, we've got a situation where we now need to renew generation capacity. Labour started the process of making nuclear power acceptable again, assessing the arguments and the issues around the low carbon.
You prevaricated, actually.
Well,
Labour wasn't firmly in favour of it for quite a long time. Eventually, there was support for a new generation of power stations, but all that time was wasted.
But there was, I mean, very clearly set a direction, and Ed Miliband did that when he was Energy and Climate Change Secretary, to about understanding how do we renew our generation supply, how do we do that in the best low carbon way possible, how do we get that mix so we've got secure, diverse supply of energy, and nuclear is part of that.
So you back this?
So I support new nuclear being part of the generation mix.
And this deal?
And in terms of this deal, well, look, we'll have to look at the specifics and some of the detail of that, and we'll have to scrutinise that very carefully.
What are you looking to scrutinise?
Well, in broad terms, we supported the energy bill and the contracts for difference, which is the key mechanism which underpins the investment, and we support a 2030 decarbonisation target to move us in a sense of direction to having a low carbon or lower carbon energy mix. But look, there are some details in this which we need to be very clear about in terms of the jobs and where those come from, the value of those jobs, what safeguards there are in relation to that, what happens if there are cost underruns as well as cost overruns, both in construction and more widely as well. There's lots of detail we need to get into, so I can't give a carte blanche on this, but what I can say is we do support new nuclear being part of the energy mix for the long-term future.
Is it a good deal for the taxpayer as you look at it now?
Well, I think what's important about this is that if we choose as a country not to use new nuclear, we're in a position where we're even further exposed in relation to gas. And now, Angela's members today indeed, and over the past couple of weeks have said a number of times that a big impact has been in relation to the wholesale prices increasing. That if we end up in a situation where we're over-reliant on one source fuel, then that's not a very sensible place to be. So for reasons of diversity and energy security, it's good to have nuclear as part of the mix.
And that's the reality, isn't it? Do you back this deal?
Yes, very much so. And there's quite a lot of information that's been put out today. I mean, Tom is absolutely correct that we need to see a lot more about it, and I'm sure EDF are going to be doing that. But they are talking about just under 60% of the build will be UK generated. It's got something like 25,
It is up to.
25,
so that's why we've got to be, you know,
and something like 25,000 jobs, 900 apprentices. This is big. This is a huge project, both construction project and in terms of starting something which I think I would agree should have been done before, and that is rebuilding some of our ageing power stations, because we do need a good energy mix and we do need to get on with it.
Let's talk about energy security. Are you comfortable with the Chinese being the investors along with the French? We are going to be reliant on foreign powers, if you like.
Well, using investment from different parts of the world is now a fact of life. I mean, we as a country, we invest in assets in other people's countries as well. So it's nothing new, you know, that internationalism comes into play in the investment world. In fact, that has been going on for a long time. But as I say, this is the start of a programme. It's not the end of the programme. We've got not just other nuclear power stations will need rebuilding, but also other power stations, other types of power generation as well. And I expect that the investment will come from lots of different places, including in the UK.
Do you welcome this and the jobs it will bring your region?
I welcome the jobs it'll bring. I think it's a massive distraction from what we really should be concentrating on.
Which is?
We should be concentrating on reducing our reducing our power need, our electricity need, above all else.
Yes.
And we should be looking at the most environmental friendly ways of generating power. And if you built a nuclear power, if a pyramid had been a nuclear power station in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, we'd still be dealing with the waste problem. And I think we need to look at, A, the distraction, because we should be investing all that 16 billion into making sure we reduce our needs and looking at renewables. And we should be thinking about what we're leaving future generations. So I'm not a fan.
Can the country really afford not to have nuclear power? When you look at the percentage that nuclear power actually provides compared to renewables, can you really sit there and say, I'm prepared to take the gamble and throw all our resources in renewables?
Even France is reducing from 75 to 50%. Germany is eliminating it. Italy is eliminating it.
Germany's eliminating it, but they're increasing, of course, their reliance on fossil fuels as a result, aren't they?
Yeah, but that's in the short term. In the long term, they will be concentrating on energy reduction and on renewables, and doing so very effectively.
What do you say about the waste issue and safety? Because that's always been one of the problems, although many pro-nuclear supporters will say actually that's been exaggerated over the past few years.
Well, can I just respond to the point before, though, and just quickly, just in relation to demand reduction and using energy more efficiently and less of it. These things aren't mutually exclusive, but we have got a real issue coming up, and that if you could get low carbon generation from renewables in a way that was completely predictable and reliable in the same way that you can in terms of baseload from nuclear, then there might be a different argument. But we need to have a mixture of all of these technologies, I think, is the important point.
But it's a wonderful opportunity for UK to be investing in those alternative technologies, to be investing in storage, in better batteries and all those things that even it out. It's a wonderful opportunity, and I think what we're doing is selling ourselves short by allowing the French and the Chinese investors, who are going to make 10% out of this, to make the profits that should be made here with our own developing industries. Bristol is concentrating on the energy industries. We're working with Wales, in tune with Wales, in order to make the most of the Severn Estuary with lagoons and other forms. Let's look at that rather than thinking we'll put 16 billion into one great big solution.
I think we need to look at all of it, actually.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right that the thing that doesn't get enough attention is, can we use less energy, whether it's power or whether it's gas for heating. And the whole business about insulating homes better, using less, isn't sexy, and yet it does need that attention. There are various programs underway, but I entirely agree that a real focus has got to take place on that, because then, in effect, the price may be at a certain place, but you yourself are paying less because you're using less.
But Angela, isn't that a distraction from the fact that the energy companies just keep pushing up their bills? And npower's announcement, and we've discussed this before, will do absolutely nothing in terms of improving the public's trust. 11% hike. We're coming in on the 1st of December.
And have you read the rest of their release? Because what they've done, and indeed what other energy companies are now doing, is being much more transparent about the reasons why. And most of
about delivery costs, and they're talking about the green levies.
Yeah, that's right. Most of the increases are pass-throughs. But I do think that there's a very real point that what has got to happen much better as far as bills are concerned is there has to be a clarity and a transparency, so people actually understand where it's coming from and have the ability to do something about it.
That may not be enough comfort to say that the prices are still going up. Can you now say and admit that actually the prices will just continue to go up, come what may?
Well, I think that it is likely that some of them will, because the actual cost in networks and distribution is increasing because the investment's going in. The actual cost of the various government policies is increasing because that is what is happening. And I have no idea what's going to happen on the wholesale markets, but the trend, or they have spikes up and spikes down, the trend is upwards. And that's why having a better degree of energy security here is good, as it is having an emphasis on use reduction, on insulation, all those sorts of things.
I question the issue of energy security because they are foreign powers like the Chinese who will, to some extent, be in control. But let's have a look at the strike price. Let's go back to the strike price here of how much this is going to cost. They've agreed the strike price of £92.50 for every megawatt hour of energy Hinkley C generates per hour. That's twice, almost twice, the current wholesale cost of electricity. How's that a good deal?
I think it varies between 89.50 and 92.50, depending on what happens
the second part, yes. But it's still high.
With another power station, but it is high.
And do you back it?
But the other you've got to set that against. Well, what is the alternative? The alternative is to do what we did previously, which is have an expansion in terms of gas capacity. And with gas capacity, you're reliant on what's happening to the wholesale price of gas. And if you look at it's hard to predict with any certainty, but if you look at the trajectory in terms of gas prices, in terms of world demand, then it's a very, very dangerous thing to do, to put yourself in a position where you're overly reliant on one fuel. And just in response to the point about the new technologies and other developing points, one of the reasons why we have to put so much money into our network infrastructure is to enable the grid to be able to cope with lots of different diverse forms of generation. So those costs aren't going to disappear if you decided not to do large power stations.
And interestingly, George Ferguson, one of the things that many of our viewers complain about are the green levies that are part of the bill. Now, I know the Liberal Democrats have said that's also used to fund people who are on low incomes, but basically saying get rid of those green levies and our bills will come down immediately.
I'll talk about feed-in tariffs. This is a whopping feed-in tariff you're talking about.
But what do you say about
nuclear
the green
power?
levies?
I think encouraging alternative forms of generation and renewables is absolutely valid. That's the way they built it up in Germany.
Affordable?
And I think I think it is affordable, and I mean, we are starting our own electricity company and our own energy company in Bristol in order to be more responsible for keeping our own lights on, and I think that's the way things should go. Actually, the more we take off-grid, the more we get local generation, the better the safer we will be.
Right, just briefly, Angela, before we finish this, the energy companies are opposed to a price freeze suggested by Labour on energy prices for 20 months, but you know, we're talking here about a deal fixing on prices for 35 years.
Yes, well, that is as far as the investor is concerned and as far as the agreement on the wholesale price is concerned. What the energy companies have said is that if you put an artificial price freeze on, then what happens is you get loads of actions that take place which are just not ones that one will want to do. It is not sustainable, and the result of it is it puts investors off, and you end up with the customer being worse off. So it's better to have a properly working, efficient market and a competitive one with more energy companies coming in. It's very interesting, the local proposition of
it has to be really brief.
I don't think you can have it both ways, say it's going to deter investment on a day we're talking about investment, and secondly, this is exactly why we need to reset the retail market so it's clear and transparent and fair. That's something that needs to happen. That's what our proposals are about. We can get on and do that coming into government very quickly.
I think
I'm
we
going to
also
have to
need
stop
to
it there.
decide
Angela,
what is
sorry.
okay.
Angela and Tom Gravetex, thank you very much.